Caitlin Clark and the Fever responded to booing fans with perfect gesture. Even without Caitlin Clark, the Indiana Fever are competing for a WNBA championship. Clark hasn't played since July 15th, when she suffered a groin injury, and she announced earlier this month that she has been shut down for the remainder of the season. Missing Clark and several other key players, the Fever still captured their first playoff series win since 2015 on Thursday night, overcoming a Game 1 loss to the Atlanta Dream with back-to-back victories to take the series. It was certainly a cause for celebration on Thursday night in Atlanta after Indiana's 87-85 upset win, but the Dream fans were none too thrilled to see their team eliminated in the first round of the playoffs. As Clark, who was at the game wearing street clothes, and her teammates exited the court, they received a shower of boos from the frustrated Atlanta fans. Indiana's players had the perfect response, however, simply throwing up the W sign to the angry crowd. Indiana has had to overcome quite a bit of bad injury luck this season. In addition to Clark missing all but 13 games this season, the Fever saw Sydney Colson, Ari McDonald and Sophie Cunningham suffer season-ending injuries. Despite that, they're moving on to the WNBA semifinals, where they'll face the Las Vegas Aces for the right to reach the league finals. Las Vegas is coming off a 2-1 series win of its own over the Seattle Storm in Round 1. The arena was thick with noise, boos cascading down like heavy rainfall. It wasn't unusual for visiting teams to face hostility, but this time, the volume, the sharpness, the sheer venom of the jeers seemed to shake the hardwood itself. The Indiana Fever had just sealed a gritty playoff victory, stunning the Atlanta Dream on their home floor, and instead of quiet respect, they were met with an eruption of disapproval. Caitlin Clark, the rookie sensation, stood at center court with her teammates. Sweat still dripping down her brow, she listened to the sound, not of celebration, not of support, but of rejection. And then something clicked. What happened next wasn't rehearsed, wasn't planned, and wasn't done to fuel headlines. It was instinctive. A single gesture that turned animosity into something unforgettable, something fans across the basketball world would never stop talking about. This is the story of how Caitlin Clark and the Fever responded to booing fans with the perfect gesture, one that proved that sometimes, silence isn't the answer. Sometimes, the best way to win isn't just on the scoreboard, but in the theater of human connection. The context: a playoff rivalry fueled by noise. The Indiana Fever had spent much of the season under a microscope. The arrival of Caitlin Clark had brought unprecedented attention to the WNBA. Sold-out arenas, spikes in viewership, constant debate on television panels. Suddenly, every Fever game felt like an event. But attention cuts both ways. With the spotlight came criticism. For every fan in awe of Clark's deep shooting range, dazzling court vision, and ability to shift momentum in seconds, there was another who viewed her as overrated, overhyped, or even undeserving of the attention. The Fever's playoff matchup with the Atlanta Dream was already intense. Both teams had fought through injuries, tough schedules, and late season surges to land in the postseason. The Fever, young and scrappy, were seen as underdogs. The Dream, led by seasoned veterans, had circled this series as their chance to prove dominance. Game 3, played in Atlanta, was supposed to be the Dream's redemption. Instead, it turned into heartbreak for their fans. Indiana executed with precision. Aaliyah Boston dominated the paint. Kelsey Mitchell's perimeter shooting kept the defense honest. And Clark, despite being double-teamed, hounded, and shoved on nearly every possession, still managed to orchestrate the offense with poise. When the final buzzer sounded, the Fever had won, eliminating the Dream on their home floor. That's when the booing began. The booing heard around the league. At first, the jeers were scattered, the typical grumblings of a frustrated fan base. But as the Fever huddled together for post-game handshakes, the sound intensified. Thousands of voices, unified in displeasure, rained disapproval upon the team that had just punched their ticket to the semifinals. Clark heard her name shouted, sometimes in mocking tones, sometimes with choice words attached. She saw signs being waved in the crowd, messages of doubt and disdain. For a moment, the Fever looked at one another, as if unsure how to react. Should they just run to the tunnel and let the noise chase them off? Should they ignore it, pretend they hadn't heard? Clark's eyes darted around, searching the faces of her teammates. Aaliyah Boston, the emotional anchor of the team, gave her a look that said, "We're bigger than this." Nalissa Smith clenched her jaw, fighting back the urge to respond in anger. Kelsey Mitchell, ever the veteran, shrugged as if to say, "This comes with the territory." But Clark wasn't satisfied with walking away. The gesture. Instead of heading straight for the locker room, Clark walked toward midcourt, signaling for her teammates to join her. At first, the Fever players were confused. Was this another timeout? A media obligation? But they trusted her. They followed. Once all 5 players stood together, Clark raised her hand, palm open. Then she slowly clapped. Not sarcastically, not mockingly, but sincerely. Aaliyah Boston joined in, her hands smacking together rhythmically. Kelsey Mitchell followed. Soon, the entire Fever roster was applauding. Not themselves, not the scoreboard, but the crowd. They clapped for the fans who booed them. It was a gesture both ironic and respectful at once. A way of saying, "We hear you. We see your passion. Thank you for caring enough to make this moment loud, even if it's against us." Some fans grew louder in their boos, offended by what they thought was sarcasm. Others froze, unsure whether to keep jeering or laugh at the unexpected display. And then, a ripple of applause broke through from scattered sections of the arena. A group of Fever fans who had traveled to Atlanta began cheering loudly, their voices cutting through the hostility. The atmosphere shifted. It wasn't silence, it was something stranger, more complicated. The sound of competition turning into respect, if only for a flicker of time. Why it was perfect. Sports history is full of infamous reactions to hostile crowds, athletes shushing fans, pointing at scoreboards, or storming off in anger. But what Clark and the Fever did was different. By clapping, they redirected the narrative. They didn't lower themselves to insults or mockery. They didn't shrink from the noise. Instead, they acknowledged it with grace. It was perfect because it turned boos into dialogue. It reminded everyone watching, both in the arena and on national television, that sports are fueled by passion, even when it comes in the form of disapproval. The Fever didn't reject that passion, they embraced it. The aftermath. By the time the Fever left the court, clips of the gesture were already circulating online. Social media erupted. Caitlin Clark clapping back, literally, at the haters is iconic. That's how you handle boos, with class. They just turned an entire arena's hate into a standing ovation moment. Sports networks replayed the gesture in slow motion, commentators analyzing every angle. Was it sarcastic? Was it respectful? Was it both?